88.3 WPPB.org, and I've got Ben and Dave from Southold Bay Oysters on with us. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
So I'm really excited to have you in the studio. I had initially intended to interview you at my former station at WRIV in Riverhead, but then the transition happened, and you were interviewed by my apprentice, Devin.
Yes,
Devin,
Dishing with
Dishing with, which I thought was a great name.
It is.
By the way. So, I didn't get to interview you myself. Now, I've known of you. Now, how long have you been in business now? It's been a couple years.
This is our 5th year growing oysters.
All right, more than a couple. 5th year. So did you guys get in when, because there's been a huge resurgence as far as our oyster farming, oyster farmers are concerned. And congratulations, I saw that the Southold town board just passed that roadside oyster farming.
Yep, that just went into effect last week. It's the front page of the Suffolk Times this week, and it has been a huge help to oyster growers. It's something we've wanted for a long time. And now if you're on the North Fork, look for the oyster stands. You can pick up freshly harvested oysters right from your oyster grower.
OMG. Oyster lovers like me, like this is going to be, I'm actually going to eat food now because it's like I'll be able to just pull over to the side of the road.
Yeah,
and
you get your corn, your eggs, and now also your oysters. Go home and have a great meal.
So do you guys have a stand that you're going to be...
Yeah, it's open this morning.
Where is it?
It's on Ackerley Pond Lane in the town of Southold. It's at our farmhouse.
Yeah.
You can see the signs on Route 48 or Route 25 when we're open. We just harvested yesterday afternoon, so we'll have oysters through the weekend till they sell out.
So where do you guys harvest from? What are you in the
We're
bay?
in Southold Bay, just off of Southold. Yes, and it's a 10-acre lease site from Suffolk County.
Right.
And that's how a lot of new oyster farmers have come into the business, because the county has really been helpful and supportive in a big way. They want to get oysters out into the water. It helps remove nitrogen, keep algae blooms at bay, so it's really good for the water.
Like one oyster can fit, one oyster can filter 50 gallons of water.
Yeah, so you can imagine what a million oysters can do in a body of water.
So how did you get into the business? Did you hear that the county was looking for growers?
We were doing oysters as recreation. We joined the SPAT program on the Cornell Co-op extension.
Great. Okay, so that's how you started.
It was fantastic. Then you use their farm, and they will give you 1,000 oysters, and you grow them to mature level. Those oysters you don't sell. You only eat for your personal consumption or bring to your friends. So our friends were very happy about that.
Which is the East End way, by the way.
And then after doing that for a few years, we decided to go commercial.
And how has it been? I'm very impressed. I think that of a lot of the oyster growers, I see you guys. You're very visible. You've done a great job with your marketing. Would you say that that's a big part of business?
Yeah, that's one of the most fun parts. Our marketing budget is almost zero, so we have to be creative. We both come
you have
from
to come on
NPR.
NPR.
But yes, when people invite us to a radio show, we jump right on that. And then, of course, Instagram and Facebook really come in handy.
Most of our sales are directly to consumers. So we do a lot of pop-up row bars. We go to private events, oyster festivals, which keeps us busy throughout the season.
Speaking of which, I hear next Saturday, Greenport Harbor Brewing Company is having an Oyster Fest. Is that in Greenport or in Peconic?
They have 2 locations for the brewery. The Oyster Festival is always in downtown Greenport at the original site. It's an old firehouse.
Yes.
It's their 7th annual. Next Sunday, October 13th, from 1 to 6 p.m. We'll be shucking our oysters, and there'll be 8 other local farmers, all from Long Island, shucking their oysters. You can meet the farmers, ask them anything about oysters, buy them direct from them, and enjoy some beer.
Do you know any of the other other growers that are going to be at Oyster Fest?
Yes.
Great.
So I know Peconic Pearls will be there. We work a lot with them. They're also in Southold Bay. Oyster Ponds, Little Ram, Lucky 13, which is over in Great South Bay, Cornell Oysters, and Founders, and Thatch Island, which is also a Great South Bay grower.
Very cool.
Multiple bays, which is good. You can try multiple oysters from Long Island.
Yes. Now, let's talk a little bit about the terroir angle. When I've written about oysters, one of the things I like to talk about is the connection between wine and, terroir means like, every every wine is a little different tasting because of the conditions of the soil in the spot that they are grown, and then what the how the breeze is or the sun is, and whatnot. So is that, I understand that's similar as far as oysters. You can have an oyster grower right next to you and have oyster the taste or the salinity be completely different.
Absolutely. One of the things people don't often know about oysters is that every oyster that's grown on the East Coast is the exact same species of oyster. So much like the Merlot grape, where it's grown is what gives it all of its characteristics, all of
and then
its
how
taste
it's
components.
mixed and whatnot.
Exactly. So anything that is an environmental factor, from the temperature of the water to the different algae that it has available to it, to the depth of the water, the currents, will affect everything about its taste, and also even the color of the shell. In the Baconics, you tend to see kind of a bronze color. If you go across the way to the Long Island Sound and Mystic, that same species of oyster will be almost green or blue. So visiting an oyster festival where you can try 9 different brands of oyster, all the same species, really lets you appreciate all those different characteristics all at the same time, because they will taste very different based on where they grew.
And also the size, how you farm it, or like what affects the deepness of the cup?
We have to tumble our oysters every 4 weeks through a big metal cylinder, which kind of forces the oysters to grow into a deeper cup. It's purely cosmetic, but it makes for a better raw bar oyster. In the wild, an oyster really wants to grow long and flat and attached to all the other oysters around it and form a reef. That's how oysters were harvested at the turn of the century in the wild, and they would be shucked and put into cans for a cheap source of protein. Nowadays, the market really is for an oyster on the half shell. We want it to be attractive. So to do that, we take them out of the water, put them through a big tumbler. It breaks off the newest growth, a little kind of fish scale kind of thickness at the outer part of the shell. And that just forces the meat to stay centered and the oyster to really look pretty.
Dave Daly, Southold Bay Oysters, dropping the knowledge.
Everyone in the studio right now, their minds are like,
yes,
what?
Yes. So my father, Dave Volpe.
My background is in the environmental sciences. That's what I got my degrees in. So this is blowing me away.
Oh, really?
I'm in awe of your knowledge and what you're doing.
Yeah, we started doing farm tours because we found that a lot of people, there's so many people who love oysters now, much like with wine, but people have a lot of the same questions, are unaware of some of the same things that go into oyster farming. So we've been doing farm tours now for 3 years where people can come see the whole process from the hatchery right to grow out. And they learn all these things, and we always see that people's minds are kind of blown by some of these elements that go into oyster farming.
That's gonna be
and they
really
leave being experts. They can go
They
take
love
over a cocktail party and share their knowledge.
This begs the question.
Yeah.
Do they really have aphrodisiac,
Aphrodisiacal qualities?
Yeah.
That's the claim.
Do they really?
I haven't seen it disproven.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I've heard that's an old wives' tale, which I don't think, that's probably a really outdated phrase that I shouldn't use.
And also, since I live in the Hudson, I grew up in the Hudson River area, are there oysters in the Hudson River?
Once you go too far north, it's not salty enough.
Okay.
Oysters do like a bit of brackish water, so it can't be as
Really?
salty as the ocean.
Right outside of New York City, there's oysters, right?
Oh, in New York City, yes.
Yeah,
Once
I
you
mean,
go past
they
the
used to
Verrazano
be-
Bridge, past the Tappan Zee Bridge.
New York City used to be have a huge oyster eating, and that oysters were a major protein. Back in the day.
1800s, New York was the capital of oysters in the world.
Yes.
So any oysters you would eat actually would come
Coming
from
out
New
of the
York
Hudson
Harbor.
River?
Correct?
Yeah.
It is believed that Queen Victoria's favorite oyster was a New York oyster.
Oh, that's Ben Gonzalez dropping the knowledge here on the Heart of the East End.
And there's pearl. I want to know about pearls.
Oh, so it's very rare. I have lived out here for 10 years, and someone who grew up out here just found their first pearl.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it's very uncommon.
We have not found one. It's not as common in this species of oyster, the eastern oyster, but it can happen.
Yeah.
It would usually be an older oyster. Ours are only about 20 months old.
Sometimes they a lot of times they cultivate it. So what, they stick a grain of sand in there, and then
that's a South Pacific species of oyster that tends not to be eaten. It's not really an edible oyster, but that makes your cultured pearls that are quite expensive.
More knowledge here.
I know.
The way they grow their shells is actually that the meat will actually, or the oyster will expand and contract a few times. And slowly will be pushing calcium into the shell and then getting the shell stronger and stronger and stronger. If something gets in between that process, the oyster will just cover it and then protect itself and then keep building shell. And that's how pearls are.
I also heard that if you drink alcohol while you're popping raw oysters, that can, sometimes oysters are biofilters, so they may have germs in them. That the alcohol might kill bacteria. That's what I
haven't heard that.
I heard that.
You always hear new things.
There's a public health thing.
I thought it was just because people like to have alcohol with their oysters. I didn't realize there was
Right.
It may have some
I remember
functional reason
I was
for it.
doing they do these like oyster shooters is a thing
Uh-huh.
where they put vodka in, and then you eat the oyster with the vodka. And I remember I was asking someone about it for an article, and they were like, "That's very cruel. It's very cruel to do." And I'm like, "I don't understand." And they said, because when you're eating an oyster, the oyster's still alive.
Yes.
And that's something that like people don't.
We don't tell our vegan friends that.
Wait,
They must have
It's
small
like,
brains, so they don't care.
what are you talking about?
The oyster.
Well, I
Not
mean,
the people.
well, I was like, oh God, my dad. It's like, oh no, my dad said that
Filter went
vegans
off.
have small brains on NPR.
No, I'm
No.
talking about the oyster.
Yes, I know. I was just checking.
Okay.
Just checking. All right.
Around
Yeah.
the
So, yeah, the size of an oyster's brain is relatively small, but I have
It might
no.
even be non-existent.
Yeah, I don't know.
They don't care if they're being
I don't. Well, that these are questions, Dad. These are scientific questions that I don't think any of us can answer.
Yes.
You
That
know?
would be a good question for Cornell. They know everything
They
you
know
could
if
possibly want to
oysters
know
care.
about
Oyster?
oysters and marine life.
All right.
If you want to try some oysters, check out Oyster Fest at the Greenport Harbor Brewing Company Greenport location next Saturday. When are you guys getting started over there?
We will start shucking at 1 o'clock. We'll go right through till 6. They have live music from 2 until 5, and they will be debuting their Oyster Stout, which is a stout they release every fall, made with oysters actually in the tank. And stout pairs perfectly with oysters.
Now, because no, Dad has a question.
No, I'm just saying. It's
That's
the alcohol
awesome.
Again. I mean, I'm not an alcoholic.
It's-
It sounds delicious.
It's a little too early, Dad. It's before noon. You can't rhyme or drink before noon.
Right.
All right.
I don't.
I'm kidding. I'm playing with you. I'm sorry.
Well, they don't know.
I'm
They don't
sorry.
know I have that rhyming disorder.
They don't, but now they do.
Okay. Oh, Jesus.
Do you have any oyster rhymes?
No, Gianna knows that I have this problem with rhyming before noon. And if
Keep
you
rhyming
say
all the
something,
time.
I'll start rhyming. I think it must be a psychological disorder.
That's why I'm really good at rhyming, because we used to play the game,
We used to play the game.
right?
every
You'd
day.
be like Matt, and then I'd be like Pat, and then you'd be like
If you want
Sat.
to be an oyster, you got to go to a cloister.
It works.
Yeah, it works. I'm shutting up now.
No, well, I love you. I don't want you to shut up. All right, so I've got 2 tracks from 2017, and they're both by artists named Julia. But since we're talking about Greenport and we're talking about tickets and stuff, is there tickets? You need tickets?
No, just walk in and
Just
open
walk
to the
in.
public, and you buy direct from
Oh,
the oyster
cool.
farmers and beer directly from the brewers.
Very cool. All right, well, we're going to bunny hop over Julia Gargano's single Son to play Julia King from Greenport. Julia King's one-way ticket to somewhere here on the last 20 minutes of the Heart of the East End on WPPB 88.3 FM. Heard online at 883WPPB.org. We are being joined by Dave Daly and Ben Gonzalez from Southold Bay Oysters on Long Island's only local NPR station, WPPB Peconic Public Broadcasting.